Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Tooley. I'm from Seattle, Washington, and my portion this morning will be the land acknowledgement. I first of all want to thank RWJ for the platform, allowing us to be a part of this great discussion, as well as the SAH team here. Also, I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Mays' eloquent land acknowledgement he provided the other day. But in addition to what Dr. Mays has indicated, I'd also like to add that there's a lot of probably uncovered elements of the land acknowledgement, much of being the lack of treaty obligation, pretty much a lot of land dispossession, quite often treaties that were broken has resulted in a great deal of troubles on native land. This particular region specifically was common to the Arapaho, Cheyenne, Apache, Sioux, Blackfeets, Pawnees. Right around about 1858, the gold was a main goal of the settlers coming into this area. Therefore, culminating in the forceful removal of all the natives of this area by 1864, almost 260 years to the date, November 29th, there was a massacre of 230 Native women and children, known as the Sand Creek Massacre. And it's just elements like that has just added a strong legacy of sadness and trauma that has resulted over the years for Native folks. And it's kind of resulted in a bigger picture of a lot of trials, tribulations, challenges, and that's kind of what land acknowledgement has meant to a lot of natives. Not necessarily that, hey, we acknowledge the people that were once here, but rather how do we gain concrete results from these acknowledgements, such as honoring those treaties, such as perhaps getting some of those land rights together, and perhaps some of those gaining these unlevel civil rights that are still ongoing in our society. And with that, I'll pass the baton on to Dr. Lamont.
I'm Jeffrey from Mandela Yoga Project. I will read aloud as you read yourself the labor acknowledgement. We humbly acknowledge and honor the profound contributions of enslaved individuals, predominantly of African descent, whose unwavering labor and endurance forged the foundation upon which our nation stands today. Their toil and suffering, endured amidst the brutality of chattel slavery and the indigenous legacy of Jim Crow, shaped the very fabric of our society, propelling its growth and prosperity. We stand in solidarity with the descendants of the enslaved, bearing witness to the enduring repercussions of their oppression and vowing to dismantle the systems of inequity that continue to perpetuate their marginalization and exclusion. We acknowledge their labor, honor their sacrifice, and actively work toward a future rooted in justice, equity, and collective healing. We commit to long-term anti-racist action by challenging oppressive systems in our own personal and professional lives, always centering Black leadership and prioritizing their needs and guidance. You'll hear more about Mandela Yoga Project from my colleague Richa and I later, but one of the key ways that we make our integrative health intervention culturally resonant in each context in which it is practiced is that we open and close with a culturally resonant resiliency practice, because each of us brings from our culture some resiliency practice that helps us And so when Mandela Yoga peer facilitators gather, they're invited to share a culturally resonant practice that will mean something to those who gather together. So were my late sister Sonia to have gathered to practice what we now call Sonia's sequence, because we grew up in our daddy's Baptist church, we would have opened with something like, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. All in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. All in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. All in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine." Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you, Brother Jeffrey, for that, and also Dr. Tooley. And with the Systems Alignment Innovation Hub, culture is such an important part. And I forgot which organization mentioned cultural rigor, but we infuse it in everything. And it's actually one of our anti-racist principles that guide and fortify our work that we adopted from the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. And they mentioned that culture is the life force of a movement. It's the life force of an initiative. And when a people's culture is respected, their power will grow. And so as we engage in this transformative research praxis, culture is such a critical element and important part of our work. So thank you, Brother Jeffrey, for that culture share. And so my name is Lamont Green, and I am a Gullah Geechee from the Low Country Sea Islands of South Carolina. And I'm also a person with lived experience of homelessness, behavioral health issues, substance use, crack cocaine, meth. And so just to be standing here today, given my background, right, I should either be in prison or dead. And when we were invited, TAC was invited to apply. Oh, I told myself I was gonna cry. When TAC was invited to apply by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Systems for Action, we were really shocked because it seemed like such an amazing initiative. And when Glenn and Carrington let us know that we were selected, it was even more of a shock. And Carrington mentioned that they were really intrigued by the work around racism and healing. And it's just, I just want to thank Glenn and Carrington, the whole SRA team. Oh my God, I'm a mess. Oh, I was not expecting this. No, thank you, I'll be okay. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, Carolyn and Leah and Isabel. This has been such a powerful and amazing project that's been having a lot of impact. And so I'm just really excited for you all to hear from some of the Systems Alignment Innovation Hub grantees. And just to share a little bit about the Systems Alignment Innovation Hub. So we are a product of S4A. So it's the Systems for Action Systems Alignment Innovation Hub. And it's been such an honor to help stand this up. And we have some amazing staff too. So I just want to give Rachel Host, who's been amazing, and Nastasia Moore, and Lamar Polk, and Dr. Melissa Espinosa, and of course, the wonderful Monique from Arc for Justice. And so a big part of the Systems Alignment Innovation Hub is the recognition, and to quote Just Lead Washington, that those closest to the problem are also closest to the solutions, but furthest from power and resources. And so how do we flip that script? As Alonzo mentioned earlier, to have more of a balance, right? To both uplift and advance academic knowledge building, and also to advance community knowledge building. Because there's a lot of cultural wisdom, ancestral wisdom on what works that's not even a part of the evidence base. And so that is at the core of our work. So getting to the grantees, the part that you all are really here for, if each of you could introduce yourself, just go in a round of introducing who you are, and then we're going to come to each grantee and have you 2 minutes or less. Just give us a brief snapshot of what your grand challenge is that you're trying to solve through systems alignment innovation research. So first, if you all could just introduce yourself. Who are you?
Hi, my name is Courtney Love, the other Courtney Love. She, her. I'm with the Lived Experience Coalition, and I traveled here from the traditional lands of the Puyallup tribe, currently known as Tacoma, Washington.
My name is Brother Token. I am the director of Survive to Thrive, the initiative within the LEC, as well as the financial minister of the Black Panther Party of Washington.
Hello, my name is Marvin Futrell. I've been a community organizer for going on 30 years now. Happy to be here.
Hello, I'm Keisha, one of the founders and co-chairs of the Lived Experience Coalition, and I'm she, her pronouns.
Richa Gawande, a community research scientist and mindfulness and compassion teacher with the Mandela Yoga Project. She, her pronouns, here from Nipmuc in Massachusetts, land colonially known as Boston, Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Like my colleague Richa, also from where she just said. I am the son of Mary Rivers from the Low Country of South Carolina, which was where slavery first began to create the wealth of this nation. And I'm the son of Charles Thomas from Bruton, Alabama. I'm the father of Omriki. I was born in Mississippi in '63. And the year that I was born, 60 Black churches were bombed because of the work they were doing in voting rights. Luckily, my daddy's church wasn't one of them.
My name is Vicki Harris. I'm founder and CEO of Community Connexer in Nashville, Tennessee.
Mike Tuley, CEO of a nonprofit organization known as United Indians of All Tribes Foundation. We've been around for about 54 years, and we comprise of about 14 programs.
My name is Ben Breyer. I live in Seattle, Washington. I'm the Native Veterans Coordinator at United Indians of All Tribes Foundation. My people are Ashkenazi Jewish lineage from the Eastern Europe.
Nice, thank you all. So let's start with United Indian of All Tribes Foundation, since you all already have the mic. And if you could, just briefly, in about 2 minutes or less, share a little bit about the grand challenge that you're trying to solve through systems alignment innovation research.
The grand challenge. The grand challenge for our project is really to increase access to veteran services for our Native veteran community. We're often hearing from our community that people don't know they're eligible for benefits, or went to the VA 20 years ago and faced discrimination, or were told no, or for whatever reason, they've never gone back. And because of their lack of benefits, or they haven't been able to get the services that they've earned and that they deserve, they're sort of a cascading of negative health consequences, whether it's homelessness, whether it's substance use. Uh, when people aren't able to get the services that they need, um, then it often affects so many areas of their lives. And so we really want to make sure that the people in our community are able to get the access and the resources that they need in a culturally responsive way. Because even if they are able to get the services that they need, if they're not done in a way that respects their culture and respects their practices, they won't show up again. So really making sure that we can serve as a resource for the community, work with our system partners, and make sure that our Native veterans get the services that they've earned, and through the traumas that they've experienced, making sure that we can provide those that help.
Thank you, Ben. So going to move. Oh, you want to add? Yeah.
No, I'm just going to say what he said. I will just pass the baton.
Elder Vicky, Community Connector. What's your grand challenge?
Our grand challenge is the fact that North Nashville, the Bordeaux area of Davidson County, historically African American, it was disrupted in 1960s when the decision was made to construct a interstate highway through the community, which sent it into a landslide, so to speak, and that has perpetuated over the decades into poverty that continues today, disinvestment related to policies and procedures that have persisted as well. And the area is also an area that is suffering from survey fatigue without results from its academic partners in the community. And so our grand challenge is, how do we reverse that and create a coordinated system of how do you engage community and empower them at the same time in a coordinated manner?
Nice, thank you.
Of my daddy's 8 children, 3 diabetics, including my late sister Sonia, 2 bipolar, 1 with asthma. Our little family, representative of the health disparities faced by Black Americans as a result of the American public health crisis of racial oppression. So our grand challenge is to address these health disparities by bringing our cultural assets into the healthcare system, partnering with federally qualified health centers. So we've created, as I mentioned before, a peer-led intervention that's yoga-based. And we are trying to, well, I'll pause there to say, to have my colleagues say specifically what our pilot is aiming to do in Massachusetts.
Yeah, so we're really setting the conditions for the cultural assets, strengths, heirlooms to come forth in settings that are traditionally disconnected from erasing, denying those assets and strengths. So that's healthcare and research. And so not only to embed and make space for what's already there to just shine forth, but to make the research through community-based research methods and co-creation really of the process of, just like we've heard throughout this whole time, co-creation of the research methods, surveys, design, intervention, evaluation, all of that to then bring really a new knowledge forward to try to both reverse the health disparities, but also make space for like profound wellness in these spaces.
For me, I would say one of the biggest challenges, having been lived experience, but also being on the other side, is the need and want, I feel like, for everyone to want us to continue to regurgitate or relive our trauma.
Hmm.
And like you already know what we've been through. We've told the stories over and over again. A lot of them are very similar stories, but it's like not allowing us to move forward because you just want to, like, oh, what's going on? What do you need? It's like we've already told the story so many times, already been tokenized so many times, and yet you still want the answer to, you want a repetition of the answer you already know. So I think that's been a big challenge and it's setback because how can I move forward when you are trying to keep me here with retelling my story over and over again?
Thank you, Keisha. Brother Token, Survive to Thrive. What are you all trying to solve?
So when it comes to Survive to Thrive, we're trying to address gun violence and at the intersection of homelessness within the communities of Black, Brown, and Indigenous young men. And so we're addressing the systemic oppression, the institutional racism. Is all of these things are what caused the gun violence. And the issue, just as Lamont had said earlier, is that the people closest to the problem, gun violence, systemic, racism, and things like that, they're farthest they're closest to the solution, but farthest from the power and the resources. So the Survive to Thrive's grand challenge is to bring Black, Brown, and Indigenous young men together with system partners in social services, medical, and public health, so that we can create basically a space to enable them to have their voice at the table. And so, similar to Lamont says all the time, so then we're not necessarily on the menu, but we're at the table, because that's the thing, is that lack of resources is the cause of all of this. We all know that, the lack of, I guess, care when it comes to how the system was, first set up. So it's the changing of the infrastructure. And the only way to do that is to actually bring the people who are affected by this to the very forefront, so then they can make decisions based on what's going, so they can make decisions for their lives based on the benefits and not something arbitrary as, money. But basically that, bringing Black, Brown, and Indigenous young men to the table with system partners so that we can create policy change and, innovations within the systems.
Thank you, Brother Token. So, and any of you can take this next question, but could you share a bit, oh, you have something to add, Marvin? Okay. Could you all share a bit? I know that you all are utilizing like a decolonizing approach or an anti-racist approach in developing your research innovation. Could you talk about what that means for you when we say decolonizing research or anti-racist approaches, and how have you been implementing that in your research innovation? Like, what does that look like?
Well, I'm happy to start. My interaction with this work was built off of a young life of violence, of impact, and very little opportunity to talk about how environments actually create spaces that disempower people. My work and my community organizing has always been with communities of people that want to empower themselves and operate their own communities, their own neighborhoods in a manner for change. My work with the University of Washington since 2016 was to work with public health practitioners, learn what research doesn't catch. And the problem is not wanting to do the research, but how the system creates barriers for complete and consistent research to be reflective of the spaces that we're asking. So decolonizing to me means challenging the system to remove the barriers that allow for a better picture for our healthcare professionals, for our systems that are being created to actually do what they were intended to do. And in this case, we get to work with young folks. I had to wait 60 years to actually tell a story, and of an impact, and found out that as much as I wish it wasn't true, that others had similar stories and they were not being counted. They were not at the table talking about how do we change the system and the environments in which we live to be more healthy.
Thank you, Marvin. Anyone else?
With Community Connects and our asset initiative in Nashville, we actually have leveraged in the decolonizing to really think about the root cause and be very intentional about the folks, the multi-sector group, and the community as well, understanding what's the root cause of the disparities and challenges that have persisted. Because the lack of that information and knowledge sets the stage for continuation of the disparities. So that decolonizing has to start with the facts. How did we get here? And then secondly, it is important from there that we focus on how do we change that, the rethinking and the re-engineering. And thirdly, I believe it is important that we reset the table. Okay, so who's setting the table? Because that changes the power dynamics. That can't happen overnight, but I do think who sets the table becomes critically important and will come out of the rethinking and the re-engineering.
I would just follow up and underscore that in order for us to set the table, to be the conveners, we have to have the resources. So that's one of the things that's made possible by some of our funding if we, use the limited funding that we have in that way. And then in terms of Mandela Yoga, there's the health center where I get my health care about 8 blocks from my house is across the street from a public housing development. And we know that there are residents of that public housing development that do not go across the street and utilize the healthcare in healthcare rich Boston, medical mistrust, all the reasons that you might imagine. Our theory is that if we can pair a culturally appropriate yoga practice that's peer led, if we can pair that with healthcare in the healthcare setting, that we can be a bridge that brings people into the clinic where they then, because of Mandela Yoga, named for Nelson Mandela, by the way, they feel a sense of belonging. They know that they're being listened to in a group medical visit setting because the physician is there in the room talking after the 45 minutes of Mandela Yoga, talking about their health issues, getting health care at the same time as getting recognized, benefiting, hopefully our data will show that it benefits health outcomes. And at the same time, we are learning from each setting in which we pilot, whether it's Lawrence General Hospital or Greater Lawrence Family Health Center or other health centers. We're documenting what we learn in the process of trying to launch the intervention. What are the barriers that we face? What are the barriers that our partners face, like their own lack of cultural awareness that they are perpetuating the disparities that we are aiming together to address.
Thank you.
We're also taking our own medicine, right? So decolonizing our minds and bodies and the long and messy and humbling process of holding each other accountable, and also the psychological safety, speaking of what we've created with great support here in this group. And then in our little, our smaller Mandela Yoga just team process, just a consistent commitment to uprooting the legacies of oppression within ourselves and in our group dynamics. Everything that we do inside radiates outwards. So something about the research process on the outside, all that Jeffrey said, it's like a back and forth, inside, outside, inside, outside.
Thank you. Looks like Ben has something.
for many Native American tribes, there was a warrior society that was designed to protect the needs of the many as opposed to the needs of the few. And over the years, stemming from 1492, that trend systematically got pummeled and pretty much degraded. And by the year 1944, during the FDR administration, it set a new tone of let's stomp out this total communal system. It followed up with the Truman administration and the Eisenhower administration, which resulted in the Termination Act of 1953, which essentially traumatized tribes immensely because it just means we're at a total, almost a total annihilation of our way of being in totality. And so part of our process is to try to gain footing within the gaining a footing within the mentalities of our Native veterans who are very revered in our tribes to be again the people who can lead the charge. But many of our Native veterans are hurting inside because of the over the wars over the years. There's PTSD. There's high depression rates. There's higher suicide rates. There's higher alcoholism rates. All these items are items that we are facing within our tribes. So our design is to try to use should I say, traditional patterns of healing, which means that we have to reject the colonistic practices that's utilized today.
Mm. Thank you, Dr. Tully. So all of you are engaged in this transformative research. And I think yesterday we heard too around, sometimes traditionally we think about researchers, having a PhD and all those other types of things. And I know, Brother Jeffrey, you had sent an email too around some of the framing and the work that you all do with community and helping people to reclaim their power as researchers, reclaim their power as social scientists, and kind of expanding that definition. Can you all share a little bit about, as you're doing this community-led researchers and the communities that you all are working with, who's driving the research? And are they seen as researchers? Or just any thoughts that you have around that whole process?
A year ago, when we were 3 months into a 6-month pilot in a Spanish-speaking senior housing development, one of our patients who had gone through a year of Mandela yoga as part of a reentry program serving Black and brown men at risk of fatal overdose from incarceration, he then went through our training program where he was paid $30 an hour, or I'm sorry, paid $25 an hour for a 30-hour training so that he could become a peer facilitator and gather in his own group. So then he went on to apprentice for 6 months with one of our senior peer facilitators. And as a 61-year-old guy like myself, serving in the senior housing development, he started showing up early and staying late and asking his peers about their experience with Mandela yoga and what's happening with them. And he took notes. And a couple months later, he said, "Hey, I have some notes for you." And it occurred to me, well, holy shit. We've been talking about centering the wisdom of people with lived experience in our research process. And here this dude has been, having his own interview process, for weeks and weeks and weeks. So my colleague Richa, who's, PhD research scientist and has co-authored several articles, submitted, along with our other colleagues, submitted that case study to the journal Frontiers in Psychology. And it's been switched from group to group, but it's hopefully a year from now, you'll be able to read about it. So.
Thank you. Anyone else have any other thoughts?
We have an an advisory board of Native veterans. There's about 12 of them, and we've met about 6 times in the past 3 months. And we've really emphasized with them each step of the way that they are the drivers of this change. That if they want to see something happen, they're the ones who are going to push for it together, and we will be there to give them the power and the resources to do it. And one of the ways that manifested itself was after our first meeting, I was like, all right, are you guys ready to invite the VA? And they laughed at me and they said, that's going to take a while, because once you invite the VA, they're going to come and tell us what the solution is.
Mm.
And as a group, they felt that they needed the time, the resources, the power to create that, to come to the VA with the solution rather than asking the VA what they can do for us, telling the VA what we need from them. And that was a really powerful moment. I think that's really been driving our work from the past few months, and looking forward into the future, is that this group and our community just in general is the one who is pushing for the power, pushing for the change, the programming, the resources, and not the other way around.
Mm.
The important thing I forgot to mention is that Carlos and Felipe are co-authors. So when the article gets published, they'll be co-authors. Because of that work, they were invited. We created submitted an abstract, and we were invited to. Carlos and Felipe were invited to present at the statewide conference of community health centers in Massachusetts. And our abstract was also accepted for the American Public Health Association annual conference in Minneapolis in the men's health track. We didn't have the resources to go. We had some of the resources, but not all the resources. But yeah, they're the experts who are being able to share their wisdom in these kinds of contexts.
Thank you, Brother Token.
So when it comes to the research aspect, and whether, the people, especially when it comes to lived experience and in research, and I would ask all you guys to, see it as, do you believe, and I bet all of you guys have spent years in school. So do you believe that the paper that you got is what dictates what you did? Or was it the work that you put in during that entire time that now dictates what you are? You see what I'm saying? So it's like, it's not necessarily the paper or the credentials given to these people. It's the access to the process. That's what they have to have. It's liberated gatekeeping, an understanding, analysis of what it is, the tools that are being abused against us, as in lived experience people going for anything. And here's the thing, everybody here has lived experience. So that's what you have to understand, is that you are, or a part of it, in every bit, every single part. And so we have to do the same thing that we had access to, and what we're here for. We're all here for the same thing. We have to give that same passion, that same process to the people who do not have access to it now. And that's what I believe what would change for how it's perceived, how you are perceived within, a researcher's position, is that if you are doing the work, if you understand the process, then that's all that matters, because that's what will get things done. That's what got all of you here, so that's what we have to allow. We have to open up the space so then they can gain that as well, so they can gain that understanding, but that's it for me.
Thank you, Brother Token. We're going to start with Courtney, and each of you, whatever you want to share with this wonderful group of researchers, systems change agents, what is on your heart and mind that you want to share with this group? It could be anything, engaging in the work, some wisdom you want to impart, or something that's laying heavy on you that you want to unpack, right? And we appreciate healthy feedback and healthy criticism, because that helps us grow too. So whatever's on your heart and mind that you want to share.
Thank you. I will say that when a group is offered such an opportunity, I try not to take the first step. I do step back, step forward instead of step forward, step back. But some things that have come up for me, reflecting on our first question about decolonization and anti-racist approach. One of the things I think is important as a white person in a Black, Brown, Indigenous space, or a white person in white space that's trying to do better, is we have to identify the values and characteristics of white supremacy. We have to be able to name them like by memory. We need to be able to see them in action, and we need to be able to respond to them in time. We need not only to understand the values and characteristics of white supremacy, but the understand and implement the alternative patterns, how to replace those behaviors. We have to understand the nuances of language. A lot of research, academia, you've put a lot of years into knowing the precise definitions. Well, precise definitions is not how poverty talks. and that's not even accounting for the Creole or other types of languages that utilize patterns of speech that have been culturally inherited, but are not recognized as official patterns in American English. And as Miss Vicky was talking about root causes, we have to be able to identify root causes versus individual problems, the problems of individuals. Homelessness and crimes of desperation are multi-system failures. White feelings cannot be allowed to trump Black, Brown, and Indigenous material reality and experiences. White people, we are allowed to be uncomfortable and confused. And you can sit with that and take that somewhere else to sort out. Maybe find another white person. You can talk to me after.
Thank you, Courtney.
Definitely. So what weighs on my heart across the board is, I say, the lack of awareness within the systems. Is we all forget, especially, I'll say it, when you're in the process and you get really deep into it, just as Courtney was saying, is that there's certain things that you get very stuck on, and there have to be exact within what we do. And that you lose the overall picture at a certain point. When it becomes just the process, then you lose what the whole point of it was in the first place. And that's how I feel that's what weighs on me is the lack of awareness, especially within how it's addressed. Is there are a lot of things there's history. It's that simple. Anybody can go look it up, and there's no acknowledgement of that within the systems of what is it actually. The system itself was built by a specific type of thought process, I'll say. So that thought process has to be deconstructed, and the system has to understand that, so then it can fix itself, because that is the only way. Is similar to like in the art of wars, is that paraphrasing, is you have to know your enemy and you have to know yourself in order to win the majority of your battles. And so to do that, that's the enemy here is the beginning, the foundation of what the systems were built on. Now, a lot of it, we can all say that, people have good hearts, but again, when it comes to the process, and similar to what's money, so value, the loss of value, the lack of valuing the people that the system has, that the system is here for, apparently, because I would say that all of you guys work in industry sectors that are focusing on what we want to change, but it's that the fact that those systems are there still, that's the issue. And it's like there's no awareness by the larger, like the overall. And that's what kills me, is that we're all human beings. I'll say it like this: how I believe is that each and every person here is myself. I am you, you are me. And the only way that I can be the best me is to make sure that I take care of myself. and you are me. So that means I have to take care of you.
Hmm.
And so that means within this understanding, I have to recognize how is it that I am reacting within this overall, the objective reality. The objective reality is the system wasn't built for the people that we're here trying to help in this. That's so why is nobody acknowledging that when it comes to how we as human beings are addressing each other
Hmm.
within this work, you know? But yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you, Brother Token.
That was a big setup. I've got to follow. And the youth who seems to be able to say things that I haven't learned how to say. My approach has always been simple. If you look to the person to your next to you, say hello, because we are engaged in the same work. We are all being told at some point what we're supposed to do. And I simply say, what is it that we want to do? You know, I lean heavily on our support staff because I believe people aren't centered. They're invited to be active participants at decision-making tables that drive what we do. And then supporting staff help us translate maybe what the community is asking for. And that is a process folks don't talk about. I did my best to say hello to everybody at this event because it was my opportunity to meet other folks engaged in the work that we're doing. It is similar in many cases. It's, well, Brother Token says it a lot. It's more similar than it is different in every case. You know, we have similarities in the work we're going to do. And I haven't said it enough. It's we. It's not tech staff. It's not projects. You got to rip that wording out. We come to a space to start to craft how we're going to decolonize a system, how we're going to elevate voices that have never been heard, how we're going to say our research data is incomplete.
Hmm.
That should halt a process enough not to move forward because we're missing some of the critical data that we need. I will continue to echo these. The system's going to grind along, but so long as we have opportunities like this together, it's harder to say no when it's more than one. It's really hard if it's 30, 50, 100. Can I get 100 project? I see that as, in some ways, how the momentum gets built for change.
Hmm.
It's not overnight. It's activities like this where we get to come together and actually talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Marvin. Keisha.
Yeah, my thoughts often move faster than my words. So I'm gonna try to be brief. But basically, like, I feel sometimes, especially in this work that we do, a lot of people say welcome all or come as you are and things like that, but they don't truly mean it.
Hmm.
Or when they get that, when people come, they're not ready for the people that are coming.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is they're not ready to support or take the time or receive the answers that are not what they're expecting. It's not what they're wanting to hear. They put a band-aid on it or they push it aside or they turn the responses they get into we're just gonna do what I'm gonna kind of reapply what you said to me, what I think you said, and make it work for me and what I'm willing to do. So for me, I guess what I'm trying to say is don't say welcome all. Don't say come as you are if you're not prepared for what you're asking for.
Hmm.
Or for don't ask questions you're not ready for the response to. Because you just might get what you're not to hear. And I think that comes with a lot of this work is oh, all inclusive, all diverse, but that's messy, that's layered, that comes with trauma and healing and um a lot of eternal and implicit biases and just so many things that and layered things. And a lot of people that have the power right now, they don't even have that self awareness or reflection to even deal with, the things that they're asking for. So they're not prepared. And that's why they need us because we have those answers, we have those responses. We're gonna come with integrity, we're gonna come with voice and power and rage. And so if you're
Mm.
not ready for that, don't ask for that because we will come with force and ready to break down the door. So if you don't want it, don't ask for more because it's gonna come.
I just want to pause there for a second, Keisha, because what you're saying is so powerful. Because oftentimes the spaces can feel really sanitized, and it's like we talk about racial justice, undoing structural racism, and these wonderful principles, and it's all things that we are striving to embody, that rehumanization process, that is not something that's just in the head, but it's the heart too. And so, how do we create sacredness in community where it feels that way and it can be messy and it can be healing and transformative and empowering? And so I just want to thank you for centering that reminder for us in the work, because I know often people with lived experience, right, those most impacted, when we get into the spaces, it can at first feel disorienting, because we're kind of adjusting to that, because when we talk about white supremacy culture and white dominant culture, like even if we think about, and this isn't a criticism, right? But it's so steeped. It's the water we breathe in that we don't recognize how much it's killing us, how much disconnection that we have, and how rigid it is. And so as we could begin to free ourselves, and I think that's the work of decolonizing and indigenizing, as we bring culture and all these things that don't seem professional, right?
Like, come,
Right.
but don't say that.
Right.
Come, but don't wear that. Come, but cry a little less loud. Come, but don't come at me. It's on you. So things like that.
And that goes back to what Elder Vicky was mentioning about when we set the table, like who's setting the table, how can we co-create in the setting of that table, and also embrace all the different cultures and ways of being and ways of knowing in that transformative process. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but Richa, what's bubbling up for you that you want to gift to everyone?
We have to talk about money.
Uh-oh.
That's just yeah, just the impact. We have to. The web of institutional racism is so deep and deeply embedded in our society, and the impact of colonial, capitalist, patriarchal, white supremacist values on who is getting money, right? So what's very heavy on my heart is the numerous barriers for Black-led, Brown-led, Indigenous-led, small community-based organizations, nonprofits, researchers. Someone talked about the tenure process today. It's killing us. It's sucking our souls. So how do we buffer the negative impacts of how hard we collectively are having to work to get funded? And this is a good start, right? Just this incredible fortune that we have to have the resources to be here, to do the work. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's the first step. So I think that's probably the heaviest thing for me, is just the day-to-day impact of the capitalist system, and how do we turn the tide to start to value humanity, right? That's like what we're talking about here. It's like change what we value, how we show it, and commit to the long term. So not just money, but mentorship, resources, infrastructure, helping our youth kind of climb whatever ladders they have to climb, while we're also trying to disrupt how much they have to do to bring their voices forward. So we need help. I think it's like we need help from people in power, institutional power, financial power, to come together to see how can we reduce the barriers to get funding.
Thank you, Richa.
Thinking back as I hear the responses of my colleagues and from Dr. Lamont, and our land acknowledgement and our labor acknowledgement. Why are we here? How we get here? We got here because the land was taken, the people were removed, millions, 13 millions of Africans were brought to the United States along with their technology. In South Carolina, where my mama's people are from, they imported Africans from rice cultivating areas of Africa, and they brought them to reproduce that process, that agricultural process in the United States, in Charleston. And in order to do so, they moved more land than was moved to create the Panama Canal. So and that's where the first wealth of America started, in South Carolina. It was around profiting. It was about money. It was about using my body for gain. My body for gain. So I invite you, all of us who have resources, who have access to resources, to personally begin to be curious about our role in perpetuating the extraction of our gifts, of our technologies, of our wisdom. So when you decide that you're going to gather the wisdom of people with lived experience, do not expect us to do it for free. We don't do any work for free anymore. But y'all keep asking us to do work for free. Don't do that. Ask yourself how you can stop perpetuating that. So when you're doing your grant, include in your grant compensation for your community-based partners. Real compensation. When you're putting together bonds, don't just have the community-based partners involved, make them central to the work so that they share in the remuneration. So that the profits that are coming from their bodies being used for gain at least get shared. We come up against this in every aspect of this work. Systemic racism, Dr. Mays, as you mentioned, is embedded in our system, right? And also embedded in our system is this for-profit system, and everything is driven by the numbers, right? We have to pay to be healthy, to get health care. That's immoral, and it's not working. Well, it's working to some extent. It's very profitable to profit off of people's illnesses, right? So why does my my G7 continuous glucose monitor cost $1,100 if I want to pay out of pocket? Well, what if I don't have insurance? It's wrong. Shouldn't you be figuring out a way to help me reduce the need for a glucose monitor with all the pre-diabetics? But no, the profit incentives. So what can you do individually? So I invite you to do two things. If you're a white ally and you consider yourself an ally, find an inventory of racism. What's the one that I was looking at earlier?
Cultural, the IDI.
Yeah.
What does that stand for?
If you intercultural development inventory. Peggy McIntosh in the 70s had one called the backpack of white privilege. But find yourself an inventory. take it in the privacy, in your own privacy, and evaluate how you benefit from this system of extraction and exploitation. And then the other thing I would invite you to do is open all of your meetings that have to do with addressing racial disparities in health outcomes with a land acknowledgement and a labor acknowledgement. Just start the agenda that way. Every meeting where the topic is racial disparities and health outcomes. And if you do these things, these two things, then I will be keenly interested in hearing what that impact has been when we gather again next year.
Thank you, Brother Jeffrey. Vicky.
I hail from the healthcare industry, and so we know that money changes behavior. Medicare and Medicaid proves it year after year. If they want to extract change on the healthcare side, provider side, they change how they reimburse. They do. So when we think about improving health equity in underserved communities that have been health despair for decades, then it does boil back to resources. But it also boils back to design. Okay. And I had one of my most embarrassing moments this summer at a community meeting when we were presenting, and my co-PI, who happens to be from a prestigious university in Nashville, Vanderbilt, when I introduced him, even though he wasn't there, the audience went south on me. Okay, so it was an all African American audience, and they were not interested in participating in our project because Vanderbilt was included. And they are the perpetrators of using us and giving us $50 gift cards, giving us nothing, and now they're giving us $50 gift cards. Okay. So what was embarrassing for me was that I am actually a Vanderbilt graduate from the Owen School of Management. So I had to wait for the tide to wrap the room because it was like somebody ignited a fire. And once that died down a little bit, then I explained my perception and understanding of where they were, but also explained to them, shared with them that I was a product of not only a historically Black college and university with an undergraduate degree, but also a product of the institution that had, yes, created some harm. But I was back to deliver a return on investment to the community. And that there is no institution that is over 50 years old that has not created harm. So if we're going to spend our time there, we will not be able to make any progress forward. Number two is we're having this meeting in the footprint of 3 historically Black colleges and universities. Now, have they not been over here doing research? It's design is what I had to help them to understand. It's the same funders that fund Vanderbilt, fund TSU, fund Meharry, fund Fisk University. Have they not been over here? They get their money from the same pool. Have they done any different from Vanderbilt? No, Vanderbilt just had more research money. When you go back to the design issue, it is the fact that how these institutions, research institutions are funded, then creates this helicopter approach to
Hmm.
community engagement.
Hmm.
So we get grants, we land in the community, we identify community partners, we do community engagement, we extract what we need for our grant, we then lift up and out.
Hmm.
It wasn't just Vanderbilt. It was the same thing Meharry was doing. It was the very same thing TSU was doing. Yes, the faces were mostly white coming from Vanderbilt, but they were all following the same process
Hmm.
because it all boils back to how you are funded. I do think there is an opportunity for universities to rethink how they do community engagement. That it be that they design a department, and many of you already have community engagement corps, okay, that are funded. That should be a continuous community engagement with select organizations versus so that that is almost client relationship management. So it's continuous. So even if I don't have a grant, one of my researchers don't have a grant, I'm still engaging with you. That eliminates the transactional. It absolutely does. It's almost like it needs to be an olive university approach to community engagement. Also, I believe that would help eliminate some of the survey exhaustion that African American communities feel. Okay, because what happens? Institution A over here comes survey on something with some of the same questions under their grant. Then 12 months later, a researcher from the school of something else shows up.
Miss
Some
Vicky,
of those same questions are the same.
I'm so sorry. This is so, you are just, it's the time constraint, unfortunately. It's really got 2 minutes left because we have to be out of here by 11:45. But Miss Vicky, thank you. I wanted to hear more, but it's the time. Thank you. Yes. You guys got a minute and 30 seconds.
So as my colleagues indicated, you can see there's a lot of disparities, a lot of challenges, and just real brief, like about Native Americans. Right around about 1492, there was roughly about 50 million Native Americans on the North American continent. By the year 1900, we were down to 250,000. Roughly about 1 billion acres of property or land was inhabited by Native Americans. Today, it's about 50 million acres, which equates about 5% of what we originally inhabited. That was on the North American continent. Today, we have the highest alcoholism rate, we have the highest suicide rate, we have the highest um, unemployment rate, we have the second highest incarceration rate. And it just these trends are just not going to be healed overnight. And part of our project is working with veterans, but that's just a symptom of the larger problem. We have to figure out a way to, empower through the process of hand up and not hand out. We believe that you help people help themselves. And that's kind of the way we are approaching this process, is to figure out a way to empower people to gain their own traction through decolonization. And I guess my 90 seconds is up.
Oh, that was great. No, I was snapping. Uh-oh, 7:45.
Yeah, last thing, and the Mandela yoga folks inspired me to think about the compensation piece and transparency. I think I make the lowest hourly rate compared to our lived experience folks. We pay about $60 to $75 an hour for our lived experience folks, $50 gift cards, $100 interviews, and really making sure that people feel not only compensated monetarily, but also in so many other resources and services as well. So I don't know how many people in this room could say that their hourly salary is lower than the lived experience folks. And so that's just one to end on that. And also thank you, Dr. Mike, for the opportunity to work on this important work.
Thank you, Ben. My apologies, we went over and we don't have time to take questions, but during lunch we can all mingle. And I just want to end by this quote with Paulo Freire. This then is the historical task of the oppressed, is to liberate themselves and their oppressor too. Thank you. Watch the time, it's hard to put people off. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Wonderful.
Everyone, hello. We have lunch outside from 12 to 1, but I just want to make note, if you would love, we would love if you would come and admire Krista's work. She wants feedback. We'll have Post-it notes. So if you think there's something that can be added to the visual, write it down on a Post-it note and she'll review those. But this is here to capture the collective experience we just had with during this fireside chat. So please make sure you take a look at the visual and provide feedback. Chris, yeah, we have to.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. We'll get a picture outside.
You know, I gotta do. Oh, yeah.
All right.
Might just want to close out a thing altogether.